Welcome back to the Dean's Forum. We're going to have a discussion today about the operation, use, and impact of the Kendeda building at Georgia Tech. We're joined today by Sean Aurora, who is the manager of the Kendeda building, by Maria Del Mar Cabellas, who is with facilities at Georgia Tech, and Marlon Ellis, who is very deeply involved in the operation of the building. Let me start out, Sean, and ask you about what are the goals of the Kendeda building for innovative, sustainable design at Georgia Tech?
First of all, the building is 100% donor funded. So the goal between the Kendeda Fund that provided 100% of the funds for design and construction of the building and the Georgia Institute of Technology was to construct a fully certified living building in this region, which is known for its hot, humid climate. So goal one, have the building be certified as a living building. But then goal two is actually the real reason to get to goal one, which is to have the building be a change agent for not only our campus, but the Southeast region. If you build something that's this audacious in our region, then it becomes a local example of what can be done. And that's really the main goal. Certification helps us get to that ultimate vision of this building being a change agent for the building industry in the Southeast.
So about how many people visit the building in any given week or month?
Well, there's the pre-pandemic numbers and then the post-pandemic numbers. The pre-pandemic numbers were bonkers. It was between the students. This is a multidisciplinary classroom. It's not owned by one department. The idea is you get, in front of me is the auditorium, 170-seat auditorium. You can have a calculus class, about 170 people, while there are two 60-something person classrooms above me. You can have math, and you can have bio and architecture, etc. So the students were plentiful. We would have about 110, 120 people come each week for a tour, in-person tour. And then that's not to mention all the folks who just come in to visit that we possibly could not keep count of. And then the folks who are coming in for events, meetings, events, lectures. It was very, very trafficked, very visited, very popular. Post-pandemic, a lot of this went online. We actually did more tours post-pandemic than pre-pandemic because it allowed us to go virtual, and you could have 100 people take a tour at one time. And so we did a lot of that. And now classes were hybrid. Students were still coming and going. There was still a lot of activity in the building. It just was not as buzzy as it was before the pandemic.
All right. And how's the building been received by students and faculty?
Very well. Georgia Institute of Technology's main Instagram account sent out put a picture of a couple of buildings and said in the comments below, name your favorite building. And the number of students that are saying Kendeda building, Kendeda building, Kendeda building was quite high. And Marlon can attest to this. Throughout this pandemic, we've had a steady stream of students that are always in here studying, taking classes, the remote classes from right here. And we chat, we see them, we see their faces. we see their faces. And so we'll chat with them, and they love it. They love the building. So that's what it was designed to do. It was designed to be a welcoming place that really looks at the health and happiness of occupants. It's a scientific approach. The design team wasn't guessing on what makes a happy, healthy building for occupants. And we think we were successful. So it's been very well received.
one aspect of the Living Building Challenge is you have to actually measure the performance of the building. It's not like LEED where you just kind of look at the inputs. You actually look at how the building functions after it's up and running. And just, I guess, last week or 2 weeks ago, the Living Building was actually certified. You got the Living Building certification. That's very exciting. Can you describe the process required to get the building certified?
Yeah, there's a initial massive tranche. First of all, the entire process, you got to document everything. Okay. There are 7 petals or performance areas, and then there's 20 imperatives across those 7 petals. But when you break them down, it ends up being over 600 things that you have to do. They're not optional. So there's a lot of record keeping. What we did is we're compiling the records, and then we submitted that first tranche back in December of 2020. We started the 12-month performance clock on December 1st, 2019, and ended it on November 30th, 2020. Right after we ended it, we packaged the first big submission package and sent it over. And then what we did was assess what the water performance was, assess what the electricity performance was, and submitted that information. And then we had an audit. So a third party auditor who's not affiliated with Georgia Tech, the Kendeda Fund, or the International Living Future Institute looks at all the data, does an on-site visit. In our situation, we didn't do an on-site visit. We have a 3D tour, a virtual 3D tour of the Kendeda building on our website, livingbuilding.gatech.edu. The auditor took the virtual tour, and she was able to walk through the building like Google Street View. She saw everything that she needed to see. And so that was that. We had a few questions that went back and forth. That was it. And then we got the notification 2 weeks later that we had been approved, that we had become the first fully certified living building in the state of Georgia, 28th in the world.
Which of the petals was most difficult to meet?
Well, I think I'm biased in that sense. I've worked most directly on the materials pedal and meeting the requirements of the red list that ILFI requires. So I would say I would say the materials one. I would also say that it's likely to be the one that has the greatest impact, and that it's the subject that is less well known, right? We all know about energy. We all know about the importance of water. We can all get on board with the importance of health and happiness and beauty. So I think materials was probably the newest to us, and therefore the one we had to do the most learning on. I'd be curious to see what the contractor and the architect would say about that. But
Materials.
at least from yeah,
Materials. They've
but
also,
from, yeah, I believe
yeah.
it.
Do you think the Kendeda building has really impacted the supply chain for building components?
I think if you ask all the manufacturers we talked to, we certainly have. I think that the thing is that like with so many other things for the Kendeda building, the emphasis is on transparency, right? We the more we know, the better equipped we are to make smart decisions. So by having the emphasis be on transparency, what we were asking for were these EPDs and these HPDs or these third-party certifications that look at the composition of material. So in some cases, the manufacturers weren't willing to talk about or make public the chemical composition of the materials because they're proprietary or whatever. So there's these third-party certifications that basically do the legwork for them so that some things can stay private. So by having the emphasis be on transparency, we were asking them to do all this research, asking them to bring all this information forward, and now they have it. And because they have it, they are able to put it out there, which means their materials are more likely to be selected by other folks interested in wellness, which puts pressure on their competitors then to disclose information. So yes, I think the Kendeda building and other living building certified buildings put pressure on the industry, right? We've created a buzz. We're stirring the conversation. The manufacturers we didn't end up purchasing from because they didn't have the right materials now know that they lost, they lost the client. um, so yes, I think it's definitely changed. It's changed the conversation, or it's helped build momentum in that new conversation. And I think it's going to change the way we do business a little bit as well as Georgia Tech. So
Well, on that
definitely have
note,
an
Maria, some folks might be wondering, well, how do those companies that we didn't select, how do they know that they lost our business? It's because we sent them a letter. So one of the interesting things about the red list imperative is that you have to send letters to the companies that you've looked at whose products don't at least meet that transparency threshold, and or they've got a red list material, and you are able to find a competitor, a competing product that is red list free. You send them a letter, and the idea is if you get a letter from a contractor who's representing the Georgia Tech, it'll probably get someone up the leadership chain in that company to say, we just lost out a contract with one of the largest universities in the system. And right now where I am is at our signage that talks about the red list. So you can see here, all right, it's the red list. It's the red list. Maria mentioned, first of all, for anyone who's curious, it starts with 22 worst in class chemicals, but those 22 chemicals break out to this. All right, that's a lot of stuff that's nasty. But you see right here, there's a declare label.
Yes.
What we want to get to is a point where just like you walk into a grocery store and you're able to look at a label that tells you what's in your food, and if on the bottom it'll say what the allergies are. We spend 90% of our time indoors as Americans. That was before the pandemic, and we don't know what's in our furniture, what's in our paint. We don't know what we're ingesting into our body just by having our skin touch these materials. And as Maria said, perhaps one of the most lasting legacies of what it is that we're trying to do is that we introduce into people's consciousness this question, what's in my stuff? The first question, you got to ask the question, what's in my stuff? And the Living Building Challenge as a whole has without a doubt made an impact in the materials supply industry, because the first fully certified living building, the Bullitt Center, when they started asking this question for their building, there were material suppliers who responded by asking their R&D team, why do we have this bad stuff in our product anyway? And is there something we can do to get that bad ingredient out? The Kendeda building also had that challenge to our subcontractors. You're not allowed to use PVC. One of our subcontractors only used PVC for piping, and our instructions to them was figure it out, figure out a solution. And you know what? They figured it out. They figured out that HDPE, which is basically milk jugs, works as an alternative. And lo and behold, unlike stiff PVC, HDPE is not only red list free, it's flexible. And what they have found that that's actually a better solution than PVC. And now they're going to incorporate the use of HDPE in lieu of PVC for every project they do going forward.
So, Marlon, are there any unique features required to operate the Kendeda building as opposed to a regular run-of-the-mill building?
Sure. I mean, that's probably excuse me, that's one of the best questions I asked for this building. So I think the biggest uniqueness for us that we've seen deals with the water and the energy pedal. You know, on the Georgia Tech campus, there are a lot of buildings, a lot of research buildings that are huge energy hogs. And so what I think with bringing on the Kendeda building, we've shown Georgia Tech, we've shown the industry, we've shown ILFI, we've shown a lot of industries that you can actually power a building using solar energy, and anything, any way we can look to use any type of regenerative type of operation or energy, that is something that we should be looking at doing on a lot more buildings. I know Sean and I, we talk about it all the time with all of the new projects that are coming on this campus. There are so many opportunities for us as an institute to use solar energy for buildings. And that's great. I think, I hope that that's something that Georgia Tech looks at doing a lot more.
Have you had any problems with the composting toilets?
Not really. Again, so the biggest problem was the learning curve for us and for the users. Again, you know, most of us have never seen anything like this before, so it was a matter of getting people used to using a toilet that has no water in it. It really hasn't been anything that's not more than what's typical for any other building. And, you know, as far as the cleaning, there's nothing special for cleaning the toilets. The composters themselves, they're somewhat maintenance free. So we do have to have a company come out periodically to remove what we call leachate, which is a liquid waste in the tank. So we separate it out of a composter. The solid remains in the composter, but the liquids is pumped to two tanks we have in the basement. So those have to be that leachate has to be removed periodically. But the compost itself, the solid waste, will remain in the composters for, we've been told, as far as 10 years before we have to do anything with it. So outside of that, the maintenance on that is really just a matter of turning the waste that's inside the composter periodically again. But it's really a very small thing to do.
And Marlon, can you just refresh my memory? It's about 2,000 gallons of leachate every 4 or 6 weeks?
And we're averaging right now about 6 weeks to have that removed. So it's something we have to kind of keep an eye on to make sure that that's done on a regular basis. But on average, about 6 weeks is what it takes.
So that's mind-boggling. It's we're capturing 2,000 gallons of what's effectively liquid compost from 16 toilets and urinals.
Yes.
That's it, 2,000 gallons.
Yes.
That's yeah. People are blown away by that.
Yeah.
Have you learned any new things about operating the building over the next year? Any kind of surprises that you weren't anticipating?
Oh my gosh. I felt like I've had to go back to school to start all over again. It's almost every day it's an education in this building. So much for me as I go back through the span of my career, 30 years or so, just being in a commercial building and operation environment. This building is so unique that there's not much that's in this building that's very common to other buildings. And so, again, it's not a difficult process. It's just something that's unique. It's something that's different. Composting toilets, for one thing, radiant floor heating and cooling is another thing. You know, DOAS systems now are becoming quite popular, but again, when I started my career, there was no such thing as a DOAS system. So the things that we're doing that make this building so unique, it has been a great learning tool for me, and something I can pass on to other buildings. I'm looking forward to getting more conversations with other operations managers who want to dive into a project like this so that we can kind of share some of the knowledge that we've learned.
Maria, what has Georgia Tech learned from this voyage of creating the living building and now occupying it?
Um, yeah, this is actually a great time to jump into that because, like Marlon said, one of the most amazing things has been just how tight the envelope of the building has been, and it surprised all of us, right? It's the how well insulated and designed that envelope is, right? The skin, the exterior walls of the building, and the roof, et cetera, has led the energy systems to overperform, right? They're more
Right.
efficient than we expected them to. So it's almost like we could go back and resharpen the pencil because we've made that envelope so tight. We can go back and resharpen the pencil on the engineering side, which makes us wonder, well, what impact could that have on all of our buildings? So it has us reevaluating all of our existing building stock as well as the buildings that are yet to come on the Georgia Tech campus and think about that relationship between the engineering systems and the envelope in a whole new way. And it's really become kind of a main focus of how we approach our consultants who are designing new projects to think about that and that relationship, and what we learned from the Kendeda building. I think the other thing is back to the materials piece. We won't be able to make every building immediately red list free, especially our existing buildings. But we are asking that question: what is this building going to be made of? And it's not just if it's going to be concrete or wood. It's what's in it. What finishes are on that wood? What is the fabric on our chairs made out of? And to that end, we've created kind of um, a, a catalog of sorts, more of a database, but we've created basically good, better, best criteria for the products that we're selecting for new campus projects, and really taking a hard look at what we're putting in. We're trying to prioritize what materials we avoid depending on the type of project and the types of contact that we're going to have with different finishes and materials in the different buildings. So we're not going to be building living buildings straight off the bat, but we're definitely taking the lessons learned and applying them as best we can and as appropriate as they are, depending on what the project is, whether it's a renovation, a new project, a traditional building, or a bench outside, and everything in between.
What do you think the greatest impacts of the Kendeda building are going to be, both on Georgia Tech and on the AEC industry in general?
Marlon, go first.
I can say I'll go first. So for me, I think, again, and I'm somewhat of a product of the construction industry. And so when I look at it, and it's amazing some of the things that I've experienced here with this project is that these are things we've done things here that could have been done 20 years ago, 25 years ago. I think the problem has been is that we people are so used to doing things the way they've always done it. And now we've introduced something that says, hey, there's another way you can do it. What we want to do, and I know Sean and I, we talk about this all the time. What we want to do is we want to be the agents of change. We want to present this out. I go and I speak at different venues and conferences, and I make myself available wherever I can to talk about what we've done differently with this building. And so again, from my own personal experience, I want to be able to introduce it to other industry folks that this building is not this great, impossible building to do. And, people quickly, Sean and we deal with this with tours. People quickly want to talk about the return on investment. And we shouldn't always focus on return on investment when we're building buildings. We've got to talk about what's right for the environment. And as long as we keep the conversation about what's right for the environment, this is what helps change what this building is all. This building, they'll help with what the building was built for.
I can jump in too and say, getting to that idea of return of investment. I think the return on investment comes largely from our students. I think one of the things that this building does is it's changed expectations. It's shown what's possible and what's better. And as our students and the Georgia Tech community at large, not just our students, right? I've circulated so many people that aren't, and Sean has given so many tours to people who are not just members of the Georgia Tech community that now know what's possible, and it's possible here, and it's complicated, but it can be done. And now when they're in other spaces, in other types of environment, the question is, why not? Why isn't this better? Why is it not like that? And I think that change in expectation and that learning how to see what's possible, learning how to ask the questions for a school like Georgia Tech, that's exactly what we want them to be asking, right? What's possible? So I think that change in mind shift for our students and our community is key.
That's great. Yeah.
I mean, yes. Marlon brought up return on investment. We do push back on that and just say, okay, we know money is important, but let's just step back and look at bigger picture things. And then the return on investment question does go for further. And what Maria said is, well, if you're a campus, then the return on your investment really is your students, right? And then the pedagogical benefits of this are pretty self-apparent. But the ultimate question of what will the impact be for the campus and the region is helping that mind shift. Because the more folks that come through the building, either virtually through listening and watching this, or in person, you don't leave the same individual you were when you walked through, because you know what's possible. And if you engage in a conversation with us, and ultimately every conversation basically goes the same way, is questioning why it is that we do things the way we do it. And the absurdity of the way we currently do it becomes self-evident. And it's not, it goes back to what Marlon said. We're so used to doing things the way that we've always done it, that unless you've got this thing, the Living Building Challenge, that once you commit to it, it forces you to think about why you do things the way you do it and to find an alternative. So the impact of this building is ultimately whether the people that are receiving the message of the building allow themselves to change the way they do things for their project, for their place, for their institution. So all we can do is put it out there. It's up to people to incorporate the ethos into what it is that they're doing.
This has been fantastic. This building, I think, is one of the most exciting things I've seen added to the Georgia Tech campus in my time here. And I really do think it's making a tremendous impact, both in terms of health and happiness, but also in terms of changing the way we design, construct, and the components we put into our building. So thank you for everything you all have done, and thank you for sharing your experiences with us today.